Thank you everyone for being here to celebrate Dain's book, Being Essential. Thank you for having the essential moment with all of us coming to celebrate today's day. Dain's journey actually started in 2017 when he had a few coincidental moments that really sparked this inspiration for the book. So everything started back in 2017 for him. And ever since we've been here in 2020, we moved to Texas. Me personally partnered with Reservoir. It's been really special to see Being Essential come to life and the way that Dain lives every single day, his beliefs, the way that he has conversations with each and every one of us. I'm sure you feel that zen and that very special vibe that he gives to all of the people that mean the most to him in his life, and even strangers. Dain he really embodies the Being Essential mantra in the book and in his lifestyle. So it really is a philosophy that we've come to love and really know him for. He really stands for it, and that's what he stands for. So thank you, Dain, for basically putting it out on paper and writing Being Essential. For those of you that have not seen the book, and I'm sure all of you have, outside of the post-it notes here, this is Being Essential, the book. Wonderful art, and the publisher is here from Disruption Books, Chris Paul, so thank you for being here. And Janet Potter helped with marketing as well, so without the two of them, this wouldn't be possible. And then we also want to say thank you to Ashley White. She was the publicist for Being Essential, and she's kept Dain very busy, writing many articles that have been published already, and he's been participating in podcasts to help get Being Essential out there in the world, and that he deserves. Also want to say thank you to everyone that's here. So we have the lovely neighbors of Hollow Rock. We have Buster and Tracy. Buster, Tracy, hello. Howdy. We have Jean, Angelique, I'm not sure if she made it, but Jean
she didn't make it, no.
And Angelique wasn't able to make it. So thank you for being here. Also from Wimberley, some dear friends, Linda Allen, who is a famous restaurateur. Was famous, is famous. The legend lives on. Guy Rollins is here, who was the architect for this house, this beautiful home where every single space is meaningful, and I'm sure has inspired Dain to really be able to write and live his character. So thank you, Guy, for being here as well. Nathan and Ashley Brown, who have known Dain and Jean for a very long time, former close by neighbors, and Sierra Brown, their daughter, who will be performing today, a musical performance. She's a singer-songwriter based in Austin. Very cool chick. Very excited that she's here. We have Mandy Wright. Mandy is a beautiful human being. She's an esthetician, but she's also a dog lover, and she's a great friend of the family as well. And then we have some people in from Austin. So to start off, Frank Allen, Dr. Frank Allen. He is a grand master of many things, but most importantly, he's been just a great counselor and person that really just guides people through life, not only for Dain, but the many people in Texas, and I'm sure abroad as well. So thank you, Frank, for being here. And then next we have Rick and Carla Tacchini. So they are from Success Made to Last. Where's Rick? Oh, hey, here you are. So Dain was actually on their podcast, Success Made to Last, just a couple of weeks ago. So thank you for being here as well. And then we have Herb Dyer, who is, we were just talking, who reminds both Dain and myself a lot of Will Smith. Very inspirational. He's one of the executive coaches that we work with, and he also has his own business, Pattern Shifts. So thank you for being here as well. And Michael McGarr, who is an incredible illustrator and wonderful storyteller. and also dabbles in some AR quite intensively. So thank you, Michael, for being here. And Pat Hazel, last but not least, and I will introduce Pat to the stage. Pat is a great also storyteller and comedian. Pat used to write for Curb Your Enthusiasm, worked with Larry David for a while, and now he is just, you know, one of the best. I've seen him on stage, and he is an awesome stand-up comedian. With his words, he doesn't like to get involved, and you know, if there's a fight going on, he doesn't get in the middle of it. So his comedy is very refreshing, it's very on point, it's very relatable. So thank you, Pat, for being a great friend and being here. And now you can make people laugh. And
all right, Inna, let's hear it for Inna, who just introduced herself. First time I've been asked to do a eulogy where the guy's alive. But, I guess we all know he's right there, you know. So, but I would just say the invitation to come to hear the book being essential, being birthed. Every author I've talked to, it is a birthing process. No matter how long you work on a book or develop it or go through it, there seems to be this process of getting it out of you. And so I didn't have any specific words, but I thought I would address some things that are essential to authors. Words is one thing. You got to have a good use of words. I know that if you've ever sent a text or an email and one word's wrong or one letter's wrong, have you ever had that happen? Well, I write my kids when I'm on the road, and I always signed off to my sons, "I love you, dudes." And on this one I wrote, "I love dudes," right? So a very small change. But I didn't come home for a couple of days and they already accepted it. So I thought, I'm not really going to mess with them. I'll just work it out over time. You know? But the other thing is Dain has become a big supporter of mine, which I'm grateful for. I put out in the dormancy of stand-up comedy, because a pandemic, I have not been through one. I don't know if you guys are experts at this, but if I were to review this on Yelp, I would say I do not recommend pandemics, because this one took all the work away from my performing friends, my directing friends, all that sort of thing. But in the midst of it, we discovered some purpose and some passion for other things that allowed us to still have a voice, right? We didn't have a venue, but we had a voice. So I created this podcast called Creativity in Captivity. And, you know, I would say my #1 Wimberley listener is Dain Dunston. He's always the first to call and comment about what's being said on the show, that sort of thing. I know, it's the Wimberley. He's like, yeah, nobody listens to it. I know that.
I love your podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Really great.
So you have two.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I don't think he knows. He's talking about his own podcast. Yeah, you've heard it? Okay.
Oh, yes, sir.
Well, anyway, this isn't about me. I did bring bookmarks for the podcast. I thought if a guy's giving away a book, you gotta have a bookmark, right? I'm not self-serving at all. These will be out in front of the books. No, but I actually think bookmarks are a very funny thing, and this is something essential. You are being ripped off when you buy a bookmark. Bookstores are selling bookmarks for $1.25. What's wrong with that?
It should be free.
No, if you use $1 for a bookmark, you save a quarter right there. That's what I'm saying, right? So, and then they give you a receipt, which is a free bookmark, right? At that point, but you cannot return the bookmark, or they will take the receipt. So they kind of get you on that one. But anyway, I'm here to loosen you up, just to lighten the load a little bit. And because of the pandemic, I've started to tell more conventional stories. I hope you don't mind. I tell them that this is a little hard, but I had a thing for a married woman for years, and I did everything I could to get her to go to bed with me. Nothing. I tried. I know. And eventually, she married me, she divorced me, rather. And so I see how important the words are. If you say the right thing. Anyway, I thought I was a catch, but it turned out I was a catch and release. So this is a real club environment. That's what I like. The way the laughs reverb off the buildings. No, but I think storytelling is also an essential thing, and it's something that Dain does very well. He takes topics that are really important, and he dives deep, and he tells stories that I grew up in a family where storytelling, my parents would tell stories that had thousands of details and no information. I don't know if you have a parent like that, but you know, when my mom would tell a story, she'd say, what was the name of that show we went to? We went with the Irish couple. What are their names? They had the 3 daughters. The middle one has the red hair. She went to K-State or KU, and then she got a job at one of those Texas Instrument type companies that made that calculator that you took to the SAT. What are you talking about? She was weaving a giant tapestry of nothingness, you know, vague smokescreen of memories. And my dad understood every word that she said. He's like, yeah, you know that. You know what she's talking about. They had this secret Vulcan mind exchange, invisible information going back. She was the woman that was married to the songwriter that had the song on the radio, and their last names sound like that boy you went to school with, whose mom works at that place selling those. Nothing. Neither of you is saying anything. Now, if you don't know somebody like this, then you are that person. But this is the kind of environment I grew up in. I really struggled to tell stories because at that time, these were my mentors of storytelling. They couldn't even get the names of movie titles correct. My mom would say, we're going to go see Sleeveless in Seattle or something. You know, whatever. It was close, but it was like fried potato, French fried potato, sun-dried tomato. You know, we're going to... And my dad made no effort at all. When the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was out, he goes, what's the deal on them sewer frogs? You know? So this is how I grew up. But I escaped that, went into a world of... and it wasn't... Curb Your Enthusiasm. I actually wrote on a smaller little show before that called Seinfeld, but no worries. No, but I didn't work on Curb, so I just mostly wanted to correct that so you didn't tell people you saw me and I was a big liar. But anyway, but I did enjoy that, and I was in the sidecar of success of watching that show be made, and so it was very, it was instrumental, I guess, in understanding that when you have an idea, you want to lose sleep over it, right? And Dain has been the author of other books, and he put his heart and soul into those. And this one, I think, has more resonance. It's not a narrative book. It's a book, I think, meant for people to be a mirror, to reflect on who they are, where they're at. And so I think without further ado, I'm going to move these bookmarks out of the way, and I'm going to introduce the author of Being Essential, Dain Dunston. Put your hands together for him.
Yeah. Thank you, Pat. And listen, I still owe you for the thing with the guy in the place.
Okay.
Well, first I want to start with a toast. Thank you all for being here. This is so exciting.
Cheers.
It's really wonderful. I love you all, and it's great. It feels like, I don't know, an engagement party or something. We're all going to live together, and it's going to be wonderful. So cheers. When you have an event like this, there's two kinds of speakers. One is sort of the first guy who kind of gets things going, and he's called the keynote speaker. So okay, and he sort of makes you glad you came. And then you have the final speaker who wraps it all up, and he's called the cap note speaker. And his job is to make sure you're really glad it's over. So that's what I'm going to do my best to do. Jean asked me a question the other morning. I was getting ready for an upcoming podcast this week, and we were having our morning coffee, and she said, so here's a question maybe you could get them to ask you. Why this book, and why now? And I thought about it, and my answer was, I have no idea. I literally have no idea why I wrote that book, this book. I mean, it just was, I'm trying to remember when I first got the idea. So I went to my journal and started looking through entries. And I was pretty sure that it should be 2017, because 2017 for me personally was really, really a watershed year. It was a year when a lot of things started to happen for me, a lot of changes started to come, and I suspected that would be the year. You know, Frank and I have been working, Frank is my Zen master with a small Z, and Frank and I have been working together for years. And didn't work for a long time. It was really a waste of money. Didn't get anywhere with it. But finally, it started to get somewhere. And 2017, things started to happen in kind of a crazy, profound way. And the way I would describe it is, I started encountering a series of synchronous connections with either other ideas or other people. You were one of those, Pat, and through that it started to snowball. And so I would describe it as a series of empty chairs, and it kind of went like this. I had this idea to put together a circle of coaches, so that if I wasn't right, somebody needed something that I didn't do or that wasn't my thing, I could bring in the right guy or woman for him, and we'd do great. And the only problem with that was I didn't know any other coaches. I had come into this sort of the back door. I had been a speech coach, and then when people got off stage, they realized that they were really in trouble, that they were as inauthentic off stage as they had been on. And so they said, well, could you help me? Could we work together? And so I didn't know any other coaches, and I'm sort of inventing this process. So looking through 2013, I noticed one thing that came up was I started using a process called the essential child, which I'm going to talk about a little later. Little later on in the year, I discovered there was an entry where I had been with a client in Nashville, and what I wrote was, I didn't know what we were going to work on, but we came up with two really good things. The second one was to sit and talk about what's absolutely essential in what he's got to do and who he's got to be. So the wheels were starting to turn then. The other thing that started to happen was, in looking for this circle of coaches, I was at a conference in Savannah, Georgia, and sat down at the table next to this very, very dignified, super tall woman from Atlanta, and discovered that she was an executive coach in Atlanta who had really worked for some amazing people. So I told her this idea that I had, and she knew me because I was the cap note speaker at the conference and made everybody want to leave. But she said, I like the idea, and let me think about it. About 2 months later, she calls me and says, the funniest thing, I was at a conference, and guy sat down next to me in this empty chair, and I told him our idea, and he said he really liked it. And I said, who is he? And she said, well, he's the former chief executive of Random House. And I said, well, he's not going to work with me. What are you talking about? But he did. And so after another conference, I sat down in an empty chair next to Eric McNulty from Harvard, told him what we were talking about. He says, I want in. Somebody hooked me up with Mark Lipton from the New School, who had a new book out and wanted some help with his book, and told him what we were doing. He was in. Inna came in. Other people have come in. Herb and I talk all the time. We're looking for the way to do that. So that's what that year was. And what happened was, every one of those people gave me an idea, gave me a thought, shared something, or I would share something back. And in that, the book started to develop. And I gave a talk in the beginning, or the summer of 2018, that I called Need to Know 7 Questions for Leadership. It wasn't quite all the same 7 questions, but it was the start on it. And I noticed a week later in my journal, I had written an entry that said, I think I may have an idea for a book. And about a week after that, I said, I think I might call the book Being Essential, 7 Questions for Living and Leading with Radical Self-Awareness. And that became it. And then again and again. So now I know why this book and why now. Actually, I have no idea why now, but that's just where it came from. So we can do that. When you think about everything that's gone on in our world since then, it's been pretty crazy. And if the pandemic wasn't enough and shutting us all down, it's been, Pat started a podcast, Nathan started doing commissions for poems. People would commission him to write poems online from all over the world. It's just remarkably different stuff. Inna and I had just set up a program for very young people who were coming up in their family businesses to help them be ready to take over the businesses. And that was subscription basis, so there was like set amount of money coming up, so that when all of our other business collapsed and Inna had started in, we had enough money at least to, you know, buy food and pay ourselves to get through. And then that just kept growing and kept growing. So I was writing a note to our attorney the other day, who I've known for more than a decade. Frank introduced me to him, Larry Wax, who has represented the Rolling Stones as an intellectual property attorney. And as I was writing it, I realized that since I first met him, I've written 4 books. Now, I have to admit, I only wrote half the first one, but it was 500 pages long, so that counts. That was a business book, 2 novels, and then this. And if you ever read Anne Lamott, she says, if somebody asks her if they should write a book, she says, absolutely not. You'd be absolutely wrong to. And then if somebody asks her, no, but I really want to, then she says, okay, well then absolutely, you have to do it. But don't expect anything to come out of it. You're going to sit there in front of your screen looking at this stuff forever. But what you got to do is write something good every day. And so that's what I did for 3 years. So I want to start off by reading you something. And this particularly is interesting to me because one of my heroes is Elmore Leonard. And the reason he's one of my heroes is not because his books are so good. It's because his first book was rejected by 86 publishers. And I've always wondered what he was thinking when he wrapped that book up the 87th time. I never would have done that. I got a really, really nice in-person rejection from the William Morris Agency to represent my plays. Your play was great, and so my first reaction was, I never sent it out to another agent again, because why bother? But I have a section of the book here which is going to help set up a concept for us, which is called The Search for the Essential Self. And let me just read this. This is a couple of minutes. And there's a guy who is really with great quotes, and I like to quote him a lot. We have a self and a self-concept. We live in the concept we make up. Frank Allen. In The Switch, Elmore Leonard's 1978 novel, which was later made into the 2013 movie Life of Crime with Jennifer Aniston, Yassine Bey, and Tim Robbins, Mickey Dawson is asking herself a series of questions. She's a wife and mother in her mid-30s, and she's wondering who she is and whether she's happy. Why do I play games with him, she asks herself. Why am I afraid to tell him what I feel? Why don't I cut through all the words and get to the point? Why am I so goddamn nice all the time? She doesn't know the answers to any of these questions. And for the first time in her life, it bothers her. At its core, the novel is Mickey's journey to find out who she is. In the beginning, she's wrapped up in a concept of herself as a mother, as a wife, as a nice person who is well respected at the country club in the swanky suburb of Detroit. At the end of the novel, after being kidnapped and held for ransom, after learning her husband, who has secretly filed for divorce and is in the Bahamas with his girlfriend, has decided not to pay the ransom, after escaping from the kidnappers and then befriending one of them, she finally comes to understand who she is and what she wants. It's not the escape from the kidnappers that matters in this story. That's just a metaphor for a grander, wilder escape. The heart of the story is Mickey's escape from her self-concept, the one she spent her life letting other people construct for her, and finding her essential self. To drive the point home even more clearly, Elmore Leonard uses masks as a big part of the story. The kidnappers have long conversations about the kind of masks they'll wear and the kind of masks they'll make Mickey wear when she is their captive, with the eye holes taped over so she can't see their faces. That the masks help everyone hide their true identities is a delicious plot device. Mickey's been wearing a mask all her life, hiding who she is even from herself. At the end of the book, when she puts a mask on as a joke, as a conscious choice, it's because she's finally able to try on other ways of being. Mickey's story is a journey towards radical self-awareness. Her reward is to find a deeper, truer, more authentic self. The self turns out to be the voice inside her that started asking the questions and shaking the foundations on which she had built her life. Some traditions call this voice the witness, the inner voice, or the conscience. I call it the essential self, and I have a quote from Martin Buber. Counter to what is habitual, one must find the inner, deeper self that belongs to each person who is alive in the world. So, if we have an essential self, then what's the other self that's wearing the mask? And I've called that the synthetic self. And like I said, it's a construction. It's something that we build all of our life. It comes from a moment in early childhood when we're lying on our back in a crib and we look up at these enormous beings who are mysterious to us, but clearly are so much superior to us. They can do things that we can't do. They can talk. And we lie there and we think, oh my God, look at these people. They can provide food. They can talk. They can do all these things. I can't do any of these things. Oh no, I just pooped my pants again. That's where we start off. And it only gets worse because then we go to preschool and kindergarten and we're being told who we are by 5-year-olds and believing them. And we build it up and we go. So as we do that, we end up basically having two minds. We have a deep inner self, a deep inner mind, the essential self. And then we have this crazy chicken in the cat house who's going nuts and responding to everything. It's the synthetic self. And it's just a construction that we've made up. So how do you find the essential self? Well, one exercise that I mentioned a little while ago is this essential child thing. And so I want to read a little bit to you about it. And then when we finish, I'm going to have everybody stand up and tell your essential child story, at least to each other.
Are you recording this?
Yeah. Embracing your essential child. And there's a quote for Joseph Campbell. I think many of you will know Joseph Campbell. He wrote The Hero with 1,000 Faces. Screenwriters and novelists, everybody studies his work because he defined what a story is and how to understand what the myths is. So he asks, what did you do as a child that created timelessness, that made you forget time? There lies the myth to live by. So when I was a child of 8, I climbed a wooden jungle gym my father had assembled in our backyard to watch the sunset. We lived on a suburban street in California's Orange County, a street that curved up a long slope at the start of the foothills. The yard behind our tract house looked over the avocado orchards, and I could see all the way to the orange beach ball of the sun on the horizon. The rooftops to the west, silhouetted against the sky. That evening, I was on a mission. I was on a mission to look at that sunset as I'd never seen a sunset before. I was going to memorize every single moment of it. Earlier in the day, An older woman had been visiting my parents, maybe a distant aunt of my mother's. She said to me, "Oh, you're so lucky to have young eyes. You'll never see anything as well as you see right now," which I took as really bad news. My future was doomed to be duller and less beautiful, which was why I was up on the mission to experience that evening sunset in a way that I would never forget. If I was never going to see a sunset as good as that one, I needed to bank it for future reference. That moment stuck with me and had particular resonance a few years ago when I was reading Michael Ray's book on creative thinking, The Highest Goal, The Secret That Sustains You in Every Moment. Since the late 70s, Ray has been teaching a course called Personal Creativity in Business at Stanford's Graduate School of Business, a course that has become legendary, not only for the roster of incredibly famous Silicon Valley legends and business writers who took it when they were in school. So, in his work, he shares about his research into a defining experience that happens to all of us early in life, an experience of what he calls our highest goal. We each have an experience that we are great, that we have a connection with everything, that we have potential, he says. This experience, if we accept it and remember it, can catapult us beyond the socialization and comparisons that deter us from living the purpose of our lives. This experience, this early awareness of a highest goal, can be the starting point for living with a conscious connection to it. So, Ray's stories about other people's moments of experiencing their highest goals resounded deeply with me. I shot back to the moment on the jungle gym, trying to see the sunset in a way I would never forget. I think it was the experience of being totally present in the moment, my mind entirely quiet, a sense of myself as whole and complete as a human being. That's why I remembered it so clearly. And then suddenly, all those years later, I had a realization. There's a photo of me taken at the beginning of third grade. You have to buy the book to get a close. It was only days or weeks after that sunset. And that picture is unlike any other picture of me in my childhood. In the picture, I'm looking in the camera with a 1,000-yard stare of self-knowledge and awareness. A look, seriously, I always wondered about. I don't know who that kid was. Now I know where it came from. I call the memory the essential child. It's been part of my executive coaching practice for years. More than that, it defines my own best work, which is to see the world most fully as it really is, to record it in words and images, and to help others see it for themselves. So, even as I'm reading this, you may be remembering your own moment. So later, seriously, share it with somebody you're talking to. It's really fun to do. My wife, Jean, has an essential child moment similar to mine. She was 9, a Navy brat living in military housing outside Middleton, Rhode Island. One morning, she woke in her upstairs bedroom before the dawn. Her window was open, and she felt the springtime breeze outdoors. She rose and dressed and walked outside to a place down the block where the street dropped away to the east, with a view of the dawn beginning to color the sky over the Atlantic Ocean. There was an apple tree that she had played in before, and she climbed it to look out at the ocean, to feel the air moving, and to watch the sunrise. I owned the apple tree, she remembers. I was the master of it. It was a moment of pure contentment in essence. It was nirvana. It was, oh, this is perfection. This is me. It was an experience of her full power and completeness as a human being, her connection to the world around her, her ability to communicate that world to others. She went on to become a CEO speechwriter, a screenwriter, a poet, and a dancer choreographer, fully in command of her tree. One of my clients, a transportation executive, one of our clients, recalls a moment at age 7 when he was riding his bike up a narrow street in Mexico. The street was steep, and he had to stand and pump the pedals side to side going up. He was singing as he rode at the top of his lungs. It was a moment he recalls as being totally powerful and invincible, unstoppable, and joyful. Another recalls a childhood moment when her family was staying at a lake house and she slipped out in the early morning to sail a little sailboat alone across the lake. Like the boy on the bike, she felt in command and in control. She was the one with the water. She was one with the water and the wind. It was a feeling she used in her career as an improv comic and later as an executive coach. People can source the memory as soon as I ask it to. Some of them can. But often people protest they can't think of anything good. I suggest they probably already thought of it and dismissed it as not important enough. I was just taking a walk in the woods, they say. It's not a big deal. But as they relive it, they understand that it was a big deal, and that is why they remember it. So I shared this idea with our friend Ron Spencer. He's a highly respected photographer and a one-time fixture of the LA radio world, who insisted he'd never had a moment like that. And he grew up in a tough neighborhood in New Jersey in what could be called a difficult family situation. Actually, the HBO series The Sopranos was based in large part on his extended family. But when I persisted, he said, all right, let me try one story. Maybe this is what you're looking for. He remembered a day when he was 14 and walked to school with a girlfriend. He didn't want to be in school that day, so he wore something that would get him sent home. Then as he was heading down the front steps of the school, the sun came out. He heard a noise and turned. It was the girlfriend waving to him from a third-floor window. He turned and saw a flower bed bursting with colorful spring flowers. In that moment, he experienced the profound feeling of living in a beautiful and perfect world at which he was the center. So it's interesting that along with his work as a rock photographer, he did a lot of work for the LA punk scene. He's also known for lyrical photographs of blurred bodies gleefully spinning in bright colored slips like flowers dancing in the wind. It's pretty amazing.
Well, thank you all for migrating inside. It just seems to be a cozier vibe in here, and I kind of want to take advantage of that. So thank you all for moving in here with me. Those are quite the acts to follow, I have to say. I'm not very funny, but I'm really glad that that was someone who opened up with someone who is funny, because it kind of helps, helps us out a little bit. I have one really bad joke. It's like, how do you know that a joke is a dad joke? Because it's apparent. Really bad. Thank you all for humoring that. My dad is going to leave now. He's thoroughly embarrassed.
And we have another chair up here, please, if anybody needs it.
Yeah, this is wonderful.
I'm just going to stand out here and eat a bunch of cheese.
Yeah, I'm happy for you. And Dain, this is so great. Thank you so much for having me. I feel incredibly lucky to be in this room with people. And this theme that you're building on is something that we really need right now. And my favorite book ever is The Power of Coincidence by Deepak Chopra, which talks about a lot of these principles. So I have to thank you for building on that and being great. So yeah, I met Dain at base camp. I played some songs and didn't know that much would come of it, and now here we are, and I can't find enough to do in Wimberley, and I'm really grateful for how Wimberley supports artists, so thank you all for that. I have a cappella song that I like to start out with. I chose a very short set about the songs that have inspired me and guided me, basically about nature. This is a very funny little story here. I hiked 100 miles in New York not long ago, and I remember trying to find like a souvenir, and I found this little thing of Post-it notes. There were all these beavers that would come and destroy the trail. I used to like beavers until I hiked in New York. Now I'm not such a fan. They just totally destroy the trail, and I wanted to remember them in some way, so I found these Post-it notes that said damn important things to do, because I really like puns, and I'm a total dork. So I write my set list on these little notes here now. So these are all the songs that are about nature being a guide for me. And the one I like to start out with is called Rest My Mind. I found a place up high, a place to rest my mind. It's always dark and dim, oh, but it's peace within. When you've seen past the darkness, the brightest white light your eyes have kissed, it warms you from your fingertips. It glistens and it whispers in the wind. And I found a place up high, a place to rest my mind. It's always dark and dim, oh, but it's peace within. When I give first breath to fire, I bless it from the heavens to the light. And white wax strips on green brown ground, that I find my purpose in sound. And I found a place up high, a place to rest my mind. It's always dark and dim, oh, but it's peace within. The crack of the fire, the music and the lyre, holding my head higher and higher, holding my head higher and higher, holding my head higher and higher. And I found a place up high, a place to rest my mind. It's always dark and dim, oh, but it's peace within. These are my favorite kind of gigs, you know? I'm a weird artist. I've never written a song in the studio. I can't do it. I write songs sitting outside in these moments where I think the song would never come. And so to get to play something like this where the song just comes out exactly as it was intended to be played, it's a huge blessing. So this next one mentions my dad, who's sulking in the corner at the moment. I wanted a song that commemorated my dad and my grandfather. I'm very fortunate to have some really beautiful male role models in my life, so this is for them. My father taught me to live with conviction, yeah, sing without pause and stand for a cause, and always keep listening to the world's song. Oh, I'll always keep listening bum.